Hi everyone, my name is Sonam and I'm your English coach. Through my videos, I will be covering the entire syllabi of class 12 English. Yes, I will be inculcating all the major chapters, all the major poems. In fact, I'll be covering all the areas. I'll be covering your reading section, writing section, and literature section. In short, through my videos, you'll be able to do complete English course for 12th CBSE boards. So let's get started with the first chapter of your Flamingo reader, right? So the name of the chapter is Last Lesson, and ironically, it is the first chapter or the first lesson of your Flamingo reader. So let's get started. Talking about the background of the story, there are a few important points that you need to know over here. This, of course, I've taken up the entire NCERT extract, but you need not learn everything over here. So the major point is this novel or this chapter was written by Alphonse Daudet. The author's name is Alphonse Daudet. Now, this is the correct French pronunciation, Alphonse Daudet. Alphonse Daudet is basically a French novelist, a French short story writer. And for us, in English, we can pronounce the name as Alphonse Daudet also. Just keep the T silent in Daudet. It's not Daudet, it's Daudet. So as long as you say Alphonse Daudet or Alphonse Daudet, if you need to correctly pronounce it as a French name, so it has to be Alphonse Daudet, right? So let's talk in short about Alphonse Daudet. Alphonse Daudet basically is a French novelist. He was a French novelist and a short story writer. And the last lesson is basically set in the year of 1970-71, and it was the period of Franco-Prussian War. France and Prussia were at war, and this story is based in that period. So this is something that we need to remember, that Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist and a short story writer. He's the author of the chapter Last Lesson, and the last lesson rather, is set in the days of Franco-Prussian War 1870-71, in which France was defeated by Prussia. What happened in the war was Prussians empowered France, Prussians defeated France. Rest of the lines in between we can skip. And finally, in this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. Read the story to find out what effects this had on life at school. So basically, I'll tell you what the situation was, that this was a period of Franco-Prussian War, and in this war, France was defeated by Prussia, right? So the districts in France, whenever I talk about France in this chapter, it's basically the districts of Alsace and Lorraine that I'm talking about. So France, Alsace and Lorraine in this chapter pretty much means the same thing, right? And the other way around, whenever I'm talking about Prussia over here in this chapter, whenever I'm talking about Prussia, it's the same thing as Germany or Berlin. Berlin, as you all know, is the capital of Germany. So whenever I'm talking about Prussia, Germany or Berlin, it all means the same. So two major points to remember here would be that the story is set in the year 1870-71 during the Franco-Prussian War. It was basically the period of Franco-Prussian War in which France was defeated by Prussia. And as a result, what happened? French districts of Alsace and Lorraine had passed into Prussian hands. So you can basically see the Franco-Prussian War happened, and the French districts, see here, of Alsace and Lorraine, they were handed over to Prussia. I've just given these pictures so that it gets into your mind better. Please be very careful. I will be doing word by word, line by line reading and explaining it to you, such that you don't need to sit back and learn or read the chapter again. That difficult part, that difficult hard work I'm doing for you. You just need to listen to the videos, listen to what I say, just take it as a story. You can utilize your free time at it. If you're a science student, medical, non-medical aspirant, so I can understand that you don't have that much time to dedicate over here. So I've customized it for you. You know, whenever you're free in between, whenever you have some free time, just watch the videos, listen to the videos, and I promise you that nothing is gonna come out of these, you know. No question is gonna come, no question is gonna not be covered in this. Everything will be covered in this. The entire chapter, word by word, line by line, I'll be covering it, right? So, starting with the chapter, Franz narrates. Now, Franz is a little boy. He goes to school, and basically, you know, whenever you'll be reading it will be Franz. As Franz is the child, Franz as a student is narrating the whole story to you, right? It's basically the impacts of Franco-Prussian War for Frenchmen, and you know the feeling of the school that happens post Franco-Prussian War. What changes take place in the school? The feeling of the school students, how they feel, what are the changes, how these people are adapting to the changes. The entire story is about this. So Franz narrates. Franz is the child who is telling the story, who's narrating the story to you. So let me read. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of scolding, especially because M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. Now, Franz is a little boy, and he's already late, you know, in the morning to start for school. So he started for school very late that morning, and he was in great dread. Dread means he was in great fear. Why he was in fear? Because he was thinking that he will be scolded in school. Why? Because M. Hamel here basically means Mr. Hamel. You know, it's a Hamel is a, the author is a French author, so he'll be using the flavors of France in between. So M. Hamel basically is the teacher, and M means Mr. So you can just say M. Hamel. Whenever you write Hamel, preferably write a capital M dot and then Hamel. Basically, it means Mr. Hamel. So, especially why Franz was scared, because M. Hamel, his teacher M. Hamel, had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. So, M. Hamel, had given the students in the class a task about participles, and he would have told the kids that, okay, next morning I'm going to question you on participles. Now, that is the main reason why Franz is scared, because he knows Hamel is going to scold him because he does not know participles. So he's saying M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. So he's telling that the teacher is Hamel is supposed to question us on participles. Participles is basically a topic of grammar. Kids find it tough, not us. We know participles, but as a kid, you know, there must have been topics that you would have found difficult. And to tell you one more thing, Franz was not a very hardworking and a studious student. So in the class also, you know, his concentration always used to go here and there. And Hamel was a stern and strict teacher. So Franz had no idea. He did not the ABC of participles. So he did not know the first word about them. Basically, not knowing first word about something means it's like I don't know the ABC of it. I don't know anything about it. So that was basically the situation. So that's why he was scared that he would get a scolding from his teacher. I'll proceed. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of the doors. Now, he's a kid. He's not prepared for the class. So, what are the thoughts that would naturally come to him that, you know, maybe some situation arises that I would not have to go to the school. So something like this is cropping up. So for a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of the doors. These things were coming across as more exciting to him, right? So for a moment, he thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. Now, physically also, it must have been warm and bright that morning, but that particular day, it was warmer, it was brighter. Why? Because it's a contrast, you know. He is not prepared, he does not want to go to the school, and obviously other things, XYZ things, he's finding them more interesting. So that's why he's saying so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods. So now he's basically, these are the distractions for him. He could hear the birds chirping at the edge of the woods. What do you mean by at the edge of the woods? at the edge of the woods, or whenever we talk about woodland, edge of the forest, forest edge, it basically is a transition zone from a forest area to another field or another open area. So basically here what we intend to say is the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods means birds were chirping deep inside the forest. That's what we mean to say. And in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. So one thing that he found interesting was birds chirping at the edge of the woods. Second thing that caught his interest, Franz's interest, was the in the open fields back of the sawmill. What's a sawmill? Sawmill is basically a mill or a factory in which the barks of the tree or the trunk of the tree are basically, or you could say wood logs, the chunk of the logs are basically sawn into planks, converted into planks for further usage. So there must have been a sawmill, and at the back of the sawmill there must have been an open field. So the Prussian soldiers were drilling. Drilling means, you can see the GIF I have put in. This must be some intense drill. Maybe those Prussian soldiers were not doing such an intense war kind of a drill. Basically, drilling is performing and practicing. Whenever a war situation is there, or whenever these soldiers need to go for some action kind of a situation, before that they do a constant practice. So constant practice, constant rehearsal. So that is what is meant by drilling. So at the back of the sawmill in the open woods, these Prussian soldiers were drilling. So these things Franz was finding very, very interesting. It was all much more tempting than the rule for the participles. But I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. So since he is not prepared, Franz is not prepared for the dreaded rule of participles. Why dreaded? Because he's scared, he does not know them. So he's not prepared for the rule of participles. So he's really finding, the birds chirping at the edge of the woods, and the Prussian soldiers drilling in the open field at the back of the sawmill. He finds these things very tempting, very interesting. But I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. But he's saying good sense of mind prevailed. I had the strength to resist. I gathered all the strength and felt that okay, these are all temptations and I must go to school, and hurried off to school. So you can understand the situation. Franz is moving towards his school, right? Next, we'll move ahead. So now what happens? Now he hasn't reached school. This is en route to the school, and he's walking to the school. And you know the confusions that are going on in his mind, and the dread and the scare, everything you know. Okay. So what happens now? When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. Now the moment he passes the town hall is kind of an administrative building over there, right? En route to the school. So when he passes the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. Now please understand, 1870-71 period over there in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine, the main source of information was that bulletin board. All the news, good and bad, in this case it was mostly bad only, because the warlike situation was there, and French, that is the districts of Alsace and Lorraine, they were losing at the hands of Prussia. They lost the war, and now, so all the bad news was only there. So from the last 2 years, for the last 2 years, all the bad news had come from there. From where? From the bulletin board. So he's saying, when I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board, and for the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. That is what he's telling, right? And the lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer. He's explaining what kind of bad news was there in the past that had come on the bulletin board. The lost battles, probably the same Franco-Prussian battle that Frenchmen lost. So that news, then the orders of the commanding officer, the new rules, the new draft, all that information came from the bulletin board. The information was displayed on the bulletin boards for all the people of Alsace and Lorraine to see. So, and I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? So Franz is actually hurrying towards the school. He did not stop, but when he noticed the crowd in front of the bulletin board, he recalled, oh, all the bad news comes from this bulletin board only. So he says, what can be the matter now? Oh, what can be the matter now? What could be the matter now? That is what he feels, right? So we'll go ahead. Then, as I hurried by, as fast as I could go, the blacksmith Walker, who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin, called after me. Now he is hurrying towards school. He is rushing towards school. But what happens over there? The blacksmith walked. I hope you know who's a blacksmith. Synonym of blacksmith would be an iron man, right? Somebody who molds or converts iron, melts it, and uses it for further things. So blacksmith is basically, in simple English, iron man. Somebody who uses iron worker, I would rather say iron worker, somebody who works with iron, right? So the blacksmith, his name is Walker. There are different pronunciations: Spanish, French, English. So Walker is okay, decent. Some people also call it Vactor. So it's totally up to you the way you pronounce it, since it's a name and different regions have different pronunciations of name. So Walker, I would call Walker more comfortably. So the blacksmith Walker, who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin, called after me. Who's an apprentice? Apprentice is basically a helper. I would give you an example, a small example over here. You must have called electrician many times to your home for fixing up your small little things. So you must have noticed these electricians usually come with a small person or a helping hand or a helper who keeps on passing them the things, passing them different wires and different small little articles and objects that they use. So apprentice is basically a helper, a person who joins somebody as a helper, and then he also takes training from them, right? So that's basically an apprentice. So Walker was there. He was standing there near the bulletin board. Probably he read what was there on the bulletin board, and he was there with his apprentice, and they were reading the bulletin board or the notice board. And while reading, what they did, they called after me. That means Franz is hurrying to the school, and Walker and his apprentice are reading the notice board, and immediately the moment they say Franz running to the school, they call him. You know, now see what they tell to him, what they tell to Franz. Don't go so fast, Bob. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. So this is a very ironical, kind of sarcastic, I would rather say sarcastic, taunting kind of a statement over here. So they are seeing the kid rush to the school. So what they're saying is, don't go so fast, bub. Bub is basically slang for buddy, friend, boy, brother. It's a slang. So don't go so fast, bub. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. So they are saying, don't go so fast. There's a lot of school left for you to go to school. See, this is a lot of time left. These lines you would not be understanding as of now because you don't know what happens in the story eventually, but they are very important lines. These are very important lines of the chapter. Why Walker issues this statement, don't go to school so fast, or what he means by these statements, you will get to your school in plenty of time. The thing is, Walker had already read the news on the bulletin board. He knows that, so he knows what is the thing, what is going on. So he knows that due to the political situation, some changes are made, due to which today was their last lesson of French. From tomorrow onwards, they would not be taught French in school. So Walker already knows the news. So it was a kind of a comment on France. It was not required for France to rush to school. Walker knew that it was their last French lesson, and from the next day another language would be taught in the school. So that is what it was like a taunt, looking at the kid running to school. So that's why he said, you will get to your school in plenty of time. That means, it's your last French lesson. As it is, from tomorrow you'll not be able to learn the language. So why are you rushing to the school? That is what he basically meant to say over here. I thought, now Franz does not know that what news is there on the bulletin board. So those statements he did not understand. So what Franz thought was that Walker was making fun of him. So I thought he was making fun of me, and reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. So Franz thought that Walker was just making fun of him because he was rushing to the school, running to the school, right? He did not understand beyond that. So that is what he understood. And finally, after so much of walk, Franz reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. Out of breath because he was rushing. So when he reached there, he was out of breath. He was totally panting, right? So out of breath basically means panting. Whenever you're rushing somewhere and finally reach, what do you say? Give me a moment, let me breathe. So it was some such kind of a situation for Franz. So finally he reached the school. Let's go ahead. Now today what happens? Usually when now this is in this paragraph, the author is showing a contrast, from usual days and now what changes take place in the school. So this is again very important paragraph of the chapter. So let me read it out for you with a lot of flavor. Usually when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. So he's telling, Franz is telling that usually whenever school began, there was a lot of hustle bustle. Bustle over here means noise, but it would be better if you use words like commotion, uproar, hustle, bustle, and not simply noise. Noise, yes, of course, the meaning over here is noise, but there was a lot of uproar, we can say, or commotion. It means all sound, okay? So there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. So Franz is saying on usual days, there used to be so much hustle bustle in the school, so much commotion in the school, that even if somebody passes through the school, through the boundaries or the periphery of the school, they could hear that noise, they could hear that disturbance. What all disturbances, what all noises were there? The opening and closing of the desks, which kids do. Lessons repeated in unison. Lessons repeated in unison, basically, you must have noticed how kids are given tasks at school. The teacher will ask them a question and the teacher will tell them all to narrate it at the same time, So it helps them learn better. Small kids, of course, I've noticed some teachers do it now also. That's kind of funny. But yes, as kids, we all did that in our classes, reciting tables in unison, poems in unison, है ना? So these things happen. So lessons repeated in unison, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better. So sometimes you must have noticed what kids do. I do it even now these days also. Sometimes when I'm not able to focus or concentrate, I'll just close my ears like this, and then, because I don't want sounds from here and there to enter my ear. So that is what these kids did. So very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. Rapping on the table means striking on the table again and again, back and forth, back and forth. So these are basically the sounds that used to be there on a usual working day at school. But now it was also still. Today it was so quiet, so still. I had counted on the commotion means noise, to get to my desk without being seen. So he had planned, Franz had planned to count on something means, for example, if I have to go somewhere, right? And I've asked my friend to pick me up for leaving, right? For going there. Maybe I've booked a movie and I'm waiting for my friend to come and pick me up for the movie. And she forgets and she leaves. And she calls me from there, Sonam, where are you? You haven't reached yet. So I would rather say, Are, Vaishali, I was counting on you to pick me up. That means I was depending on you to pick me up. I was expecting you to pick me up. That was our plan. So that is the meaning of counting on something. I was totally counting on you for this. Oh, but you ditched me, I hope you understand the meaning now. So I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. So little Franz, he had planned this thing that, when I reach the school, of course I know I'm late, but there would be so much hustle and bustle in the school, students speaking, talking, repeating the lessons in unison, HAMELs, rulers striking on the table. So there must be some, as usual, there would be so many sounds there, and I'll stealthily, without anybody noticing, just go there and sit on my desk without being seen. But his plan failed. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as a Sunday morning. Through the window, now he has not reached inside yet. He's just looking from outside the window. So his plan failed. He could not stealthily go, of course, because everybody was disciplined and quiet like a Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and M. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. Please never say iron. I've heard lots of students pronounce this word as iron. Iron, R is silent, it's iron, right? So what he saw through the window, Franz saw through the window that all his classmates were already well settled in their places, And Hamel was walking up and down, he was walking back and forth, probably in the rows with his terrible, why terrible? Because all the students are scared of his ruler. Terrible iron ruler under his arm, right? Like under his arm, he used to keep his ruler. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. Okay. So, of course, now since everything is so silent, so disciplined, so he also had to follow that discipline and he had to open the door and go in the class late before everybody. You can imagine how blushed and how frightened I was. So now he's saying, you can imagine how frightened, how scared I was, how I blushed and how frightened I was. Now, blushing, students, blushing is when, there's a very red kind of an apparition on your face. Sometimes, when you want to have some fun, you say, hey, why are you blushing? Why are you smiling? But sometimes blushing is also used when that ruddiness comes on your face because of scare, because of fear. So that is why in this case, the author has used the word blushing. So you can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. I hope you're understanding. I've put in some figures for you, students repeating lessons in unison, as I told you, and this boy, he's trying to concentrate with his ears closed, and this was the best GIF I could find for hustle and bustle in the classroom. So something like this, not exactly like this, but something like this, right? So now see what happened. But nothing happened. 1 minute, the slide did not change. I'm just trying again. Wait. Yeah, okay then. But nothing happened. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you. Now today, everything unexpected is happening in this school. Foremost, Franz noticed that everybody is sitting so still, so silent. No disturbance is there, no hustle bustle is there. Now next thing he's noticing that unlike usual days, whenever he used to be late, Hamel used to scold him, because Hamel, Hamel has a vibe of a very stern and strict teacher, right? So but that day nothing happened. Hamel saw me. Hamel noticed, of course he had to go in front of everyone, so Hamel saw me and said very kindly. Just look at the words. Sometimes the narrator literally puts such beautiful words in the chapter. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you. So very kindly, very politely, Hamel tells to Franz, what does he say? Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you. We were about to start the chapter without you. So these are not stern or strict words at all. These are very cool kind of words, which of course Franz was not expecting from Hamel. So this is again a contrast. This is again shows a difference, unlike usual days. Now let's see what happens. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. So he literally jumped over the bench and sat down at his desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on. No, what happens is he sits finally, after so much of walk and so much of scare and fright, and finally, not getting a scolding, the teacher just telling him, go sit, we were just about to start without you. Finally, when he hopped and settled at his seat, at his desk, now, until now it was all him. So now when he literally settles, then when I had got a little over my fright, of course the fright had gone now. So what did he see? He realized and he saw that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat. Now he notices that Hamel is wearing his beautiful green coat. His frilled shirt, the shirt had a lot of frill, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered. Now, these were special clothes that he was wearing, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So, even Hamel's apparition, his looks, his clothing were unusual on that day. He wore clothes that he usually used to wear, or all the time used to wear on inspection and prize days, that is on special occasions. So it would not be very difficult to remember what clothes Hamel wore on that day. You kind of need to remember it. So that's why I'll repeat that for you. So our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. We'll go ahead. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Solemn. Besides means apart from all this. I hope you know the difference between besides and beside. Okay, I'll explain it to you. Beside is if somebody is sitting next to me, I would rather say Rohan is sitting beside me. This beside is without an S. So X is sitting by the side of me or beside me. Besides here means besides, apart from this. So there are two usages, with an S, without an S. So you better be careful. So besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. So apart from all this, the next change that he noticed was the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Strange and solemn here means strange is unusual and solemn here is serious. Solemn, solitary, serious, right? So besides, the whole vibe of the school today was different. That's what Franz means to say. But the thing that surprised me the most was to see on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Now, another thing he notices, one thing after the other, he's noticing all different things happening in the school. So now what he notices, something that really surprised him the most, what was that? You need to remember it, that on the back benches that were always empty, nobody used to occupy those empty benches, they were empty, the benches in this class. On those benches, who were sitting? The village people, sitting quietly like ourselves, means like us students on the back benches, the village people were sitting. Who were those village people? Old Hosser, some old man, his name was Hosser, with his three-cornered hat. With He was wearing a hat which had three edges. So with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, former means previous, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. This was quite surprising, senior people, senior village people sitting on the back benches of the class. Everybody looked sad. Everybody sitting there looked sad. And Hosser, the old guy who was sitting there, old Hosser had brought an old primer. What's a primer? Primary basically means a sort of a book or a document which is, a basic reader or a primary reader. Something that has got alphabets, so very basic things, which small kids use. So that is kind of a primer. So basic reader of any language, that is a primer. So old Hosser, who was wearing a three-cornered hat, these people were all there and everybody looked sad, and old Hosser had brought an old primer with him, thumbed at the edges. Thumbed at the edges basically means out of use. It was old, it had got old, the primer, the document, the basic reader, so it got torn at the edges. It was not very crisp. It basically means he had brought with him a basic reader, an old book, a basic reader of languages, and it was very old and torn and tattered at the edges, right? It was not very crisp. The pages were not very crisp and sharp because of they had got old because of overusage or age, right? So years. And he held it open on his knees. So he opened that book and he kept it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages, and his spectacles were kept on that primer, right? So quickly, if you could read the important points, I have just mentioned them for you. Sometimes there will be words, sometimes there will be some things that you need to remember. So strange and solemn usually means unusual and serious over here. Primer, basic reader of any language, and Hosser had brought his basic reader, which was old, worn out, and torn at the edges. Next one. Right. While I was wondering about it all, Hamel mounted his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, 1 minute. Yeah. So now what happens is, while I was wondering about it all, now Franz, he's collecting all the information, practically what is happening in front of him, all the changes that he's viewing in the school, from everything being so silent and like usual days to Hamel dressed in different clothes, Hamel not scolding him, probably for the first time ever, did not scold, all these things, and old village people sitting on the back benches which were almost always vacant, empty. So now further what happens is, while I was wondering about it all, while he was thinking, Frank was thinking about all these things, what happened was, M. Hamel mounted his chair. Mounted his chair means M. Hamel stood up from his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, same grave and gentle tone, very serious and a very polite tone, which he had used initially when Hamel told Franz to just quickly go and sit on his seat, we were beginning without you, right? Very gentle, very polite, and very serious kind of a tone. What he said this time: my children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. See, such emotional sentence. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. See, Berlin again means, Berlin is the capital of Germany. Germany means Prussia. So that is why I was telling you initially, whenever I say Berlin or Germany, all that means Prussia. So he's telling the order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive, very flavorful, very beautifully written lines by the author. Essence of the chapter are these lines, very, very important lines of the chapter. These are very important lines from the chapter. The order had come. Wait, I'll just underline them for you. Let's see if I can. Yeah, okay. So the order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So this is, and my children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. These are very important lines of the chapter. I will tell you now what it means. Finally what happened was, Hamel stood up from his chair, right, and in a very grave and gentle tone he addressed the entire class. And what did he say? My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. So this is your last class of French, right? This is your last French class, and rather it's the last lesson I am teaching you. Then he finally says that order has come from Berlin. So Berlin, or from Prussia, order has already come to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. See, it's very simple. Prussia has captured France, Alsace and Lorraine districts of France. So now the new order had come that the language of Prussians is French. The language of France is French, and the language of Prussians is German. So now, since Prussians have captured France, so now the language they want to impose on the Frenchmen is German. So that is basically the order. You need to memorize these lines. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So that is why this he said that this is your last French lesson. The new master comes tomorrow. So from tomorrow, we will not be teaching you French in the districts, in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. This is your last French lesson, and from tomorrow new master is going to come and he will be teaching you German. So this is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive. So these are very important lines, right? What a thunderclap these words were to me. Thunderclap, what's a thunderclap? Something that comes as a shock to you, something you have never expected, so that is basically a thunderclap. So these words were thunderclap for Franz. These are also very important lines of the chapter. What words? So the above words. The above words, that new order had come from Prussia that, or from Berlin, that this is going to be their last French lesson, and from now onwards in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine, German would be taught, right? This was the order. So these words were a thunderclap to Franz. Oh, the wretches. Wretches over here is again a slang. Wretches over here means, he's calling the Germans kind of wretches. So now he is correlating everything. Oh, the wretches means the wretched people, the bad people, the despicable people, the bad people, the ones who deserve hatred. So now he's saying, oh, the wretches, oh, the wretched German men. That was what they had put up on the town hall. So now he correlates, and as first readers, you all students also correlate everything if you're reading the chapter for the first time, that basically this was the news that was there in front of the bulletin board, in front of the notice board, and that is why all the people had gathered, right? So we'll proceed. Now see, my last French lesson. So this is what Franz is now, he is regretting the things. So let's see what he says. My last French lesson? Why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. So, now he's kind of regretting and realizing at the same time, oh my God, that means that's it. That's all. This is my last French lesson. Oh, why I hardly knew how to write. That means, now he's realizing that I never took my lessons seriously. I never learned French seriously. And now, this thunderclap, all of a sudden, this shocker comes to me that from, after today's lesson, no more French. It's all over. So now he's regretting why I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn anymore. That means now I will not be able to learn French anymore. I must stop there. Then, oh, he's saying, that's it. Now I should stop French. That's it. That's all. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons. Now comes the realization, He must have been taking things for granted like we all do, right? We generally, it's a human nature to take things for granted. And finally, when he realized that, okay, that was it. Now Hamel is not going to be there anymore. And French language is gone. Nobody is going to teach them French now. From tomorrow, new teacher will come. He will be teaching them German. So now he is realizing, oh, I'm so sorry. It was such a big mistake. I should have concentrated. The teacher used to teach so much. I should have learned, taken something from him. So these things now he's regretting, right? So how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs. So this is basically what fun things he used to do whenever he was supposed to study. He never used to study, and he used to distract doing all these activities. He used to go chase the eggs of the birds, just loitering around, wasting time. So now he's regretting that why I now I regret, I sorry he feels for not learning his lessons properly, for seeking birds eggs, that means for chasing birds eggs, or running after birds eggs, or going sliding on the Sar. Sar is basically a river over there in France. So he's telling that he used to waste all his time chasing the eggs of the birds, or go playing on the river Sar. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints, were old friends now that I couldn't give up. Before this news, he used to take studies very easy. He never used to focus on studies. He used to focus on different sort of activities, playful activities, but he never used to study properly. He used to go chasing birds eggs. He used to go play by the river Sar. So he used to find the books all nuisance. Until this declaration, he used to find these books and all these things, studies, very heavy to carry. He used to hate grammar, history of the saints, all these things were nuisance. Till the declaration of the change in the system now, that this is going to be the last French lesson. The moment this news came to him, all these things, the books that were so heavy to carry, his grammar, the history of the saints, which he used to hate until now, they were old friends now that I couldn't give up. These things became very important for him, like his friends, and he did not want to give them up. So these lines show that now the realization started coming. And M. Hamel too. The idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. Now he's feeling really emotional about this thing that Hamel is leaving the country, and from tomorrow onwards, a new teacher will come and will teach them German now. So the idea that Hamel was going away, that Franz would never be able to see him again, made Franz forget all about the strictness of Hamel as a teacher, about his ruler, and about how cranky he was. See, I always have been telling through this chapter that Hamel is a very serious kind of a teacher, short tempered, strict kind of a teacher. So now the basic two important points from this paragraph is that one, Franz regrets wasting his time in hunting birds' eggs or going playing in the river Saar, and secondly, now he has so much of realization about wasting his time, and also he realizes the importance of M. Hamel as a teacher, and all these things come to him now that he knows that from tomorrow onwards Hamel would not be there. So now he's no more worried about the strictness or the crankiness of Hamel. He just is feeling an emotional connect, an emotional attachment with Hamel, right? I'll proceed. Poor man. It was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. Sunday clothes are the best clothes that we have. Those clothes are called Sunday clothes. So you remember the attire that Hamel is dressed up in? So now Franz is realizing, oh, poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. And now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school more. So now he's realizing why the villagers were also just sitting there. They were also sitting there at the back benches as a mark of respect for Hamel, respect for his 40 years of great and faithful service. So, initially also maybe in the school they would have called the villagers to sit there and learn some language. But the villagers also would have had this attitude of not going to the school, like the kids being not serious about the studies. So that is why today even the villagers were sitting there on the back rows of the classroom. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. See, again, very important lines these are, very, very important lines these are, that they are showing now. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Now see, after Prussia captured France, especially the districts of Alsace and Lorraine, so now this feeling, this common feeling has been generated in the school, in the classroom, and everywhere in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine, that from tomorrow onwards a new master will come who will be teaching another language to them, which was a Prussian language, not French language. So German would be taught to them. French was all over. So that is why they're saying that the country that was theirs no more, this country, France, the districts of Alsace and Lorraine, he's having this feeling. France is having this feeling, and the other villagers and everybody in the classroom, including Hamel, are getting this feeling that now Alsace and Lorraine districts are no more theirs because Prussians have captured them. The language was there, now the Prussians are snatching away the language also from them, right? Okay, so we'll go ahead. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. See, a very noticeable thing here is just understand what M. Hamel must be going through. After teaching for good 40 years, he must have been really attached to Alsace and Lorraine, to the kids, to his class, to his students, to the environment, to his house over there. He used to live also over there only. He had his house also over there. So, he just imagine what heartbreak he must be feeling inside, right? So but still, he's still, till the last lesson, as a teacher, he's fulfilling all his responsibilities. He's teaching the students properly even on that last day while he's so much heartbroken, right? So while I was thinking of all this, while Franz was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. Franz heard Hamel calling his name. It was my turn to recite. Recite what? Of course, participles, because that was the task. Now, see, these are also, read these lines very carefully. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for participles all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake? Now he's realizing that he didn't learn the language, and after all these things, after knowing all these things, he's having so much of feeling to be reciting everything in French correctly. So what he's saying is that at this point of time, I could have given up anything just to be able to speak that fearful rule for the participles all through, very loud and clear, without one mistake, So he is ready to sacrifice everything that he has. He can just give up anything. Why? Just to be able to speak that rule of participles properly without any mistake. So now you can understand, these lines show you the changes that have come in Franz now, right? It is the same Franz. Now it's difficult to imagine. It's the same Franz who never learned things, who never concentrated. He was a naughty boy. He used to love doing those things, and never used to study properly. The same boy is now today saying that I could give up anything, for a little boy of his age. For example, if you have a little boy of say 10 or 12, saying something like this, that you ask me for my PlayStation or you ask me for my iPad, I can give that to you if you give me this, then that this would be of extreme significance. So I hope you can understand what I'm trying to tell you over here, right? But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. But obviously, he had not prepared, he had not learned the participles. So Hamel asked him to recite the rule of participles. So he just stood up. He was not prepared and he did not know anything. So just when he started, everything got mixed, all his words got mixed. So he just stood there holding on to his desk like kids do when they don't know their answer, right? His heart was beating because he was ashamed also, he was feeling bad also, and he was scared also, and not daring to look up. So his head was down. This is what happens when a kid is asked some question in the class and he does not know the answer to same situation, right? I heard Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. This paragraph is also very, very, very important paragraph from this chapter. When I say it is very important, students, that means lots of questions have already come, right? And they will come. So do this carefully and properly. Very, very important. I'll just mark a star over here. Very important paragraph. So I'll just do the reading for you. I heard Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. So, Hamel, when Franz is not able to answer correctly, what Hamel says, unlike usual days when Franz would have got a real bad scolding from Hamel, this day what happens? Hamel just tells him, I won't scold you, little Franz. I'm not scolding you. You must feel bad enough. Because see, he's saying, you already are feeling so bad about the things, You are realizing the things that is the most important for me. So that is why I won't scold you. You are realizing everything. See how it is. Every day we say to ourselves, bah, I've plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow. So he's trying to explain. Hamel is trying to explain. See how we people are. Every day, we keep on convincing ourselves. Generally, we keep on convincing ourselves, oh, I have so much time. I'll do it tomorrow. So it's normal human behavior of postponing things. So that is what Hamel is trying to explain this, that we take important things for granted. It is human nature. So that is what he's saying. Every day, that is what we keep on telling ourselves. Oh, I have plenty of time. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we've come out. Ah, that's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. So he's saying every day we used to keep on telling we'll learn tomorrow, we'll do tomorrow. But see, this day has come today, the day of today has come, and now you see where we have. There is no option of tomorrow. I will not be there from tomorrow. No French master will be there for you from tomorrow. So that is what he's trying to tell them. Then he's explaining the same concept again. That's the great trouble with Alsace. Means that's the problem, the general problem with people of Alsace. What they do, she puts off learning till tomorrow. That means people of Alsace generally, they delay the learning to the next day. They have this general behavior and attitude of delaying or postponing things. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it? You pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language. So see what Hamel is telling so beautifully. He's really hurt from inside, and he's telling them that every day you went on making excuses. You kids used to make excuses. We'll do it tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow, we'll learn French tomorrow. The villagers also we used to call to come to the school and learn French. They also used to be busy in their own activities and never used to come. But now, from tomorrow, when Germans make fun of you and tell you, oh, you used to call yourself Frenchmen, you don't know how to write French, you don't know how to speak French, what sort of Frenchman are you? So that is what he's trying to say. Now every day the Germans are going to make fun of you, they will taunt you. You pretend to be Frenchman. Pretend means to show off to be Frenchman. You behave like Frenchman, and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language. So that is what he's saying. But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We've all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. At the same time, Hamel is not putting all the entire blame on Franz. He's telling Franz, that's okay, Franz, but I'm not just blaming you, Franz. We all have a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Reproach basically means to blame. So he's telling Franz, we all must blame ourselves. We all are at fault. So you must feel bad enough means you have already realized your mistake. I've already explained it to you. Reproach means to blame. Hamel says to Franz, you must not feel guilty. We all are at fault. I hope you got those lines. Very important lines of the chapter, right? We'll proceed. Now he's telling, Hamel is further telling that, Franz, you should not take all the blame on you. There are various other factors also why you students could not study properly. He's explaining those factors. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills. So he's saying that Franz, you are not to blame. You are not just the only one to blame for not being able to learn properly. Your parents are also at fault. Your parents were never anxious enough to have you learn. They never put in the efforts to have you learn. What did they do? Your parents preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mill so as to have a little more money. So he's telling the parents are also to blame. They never used to ask you, no, go to school. Learning French is really important. Education is really important. Your parents sometimes, all the parents of the students who study in the school over here, they used to send their kids just to earn a little more extra income. And now he's, blaming himself also. And I've been to blame also. So he's blaming himself also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? So, he must have done these things various times in the past, Hamel. He must have, sent the kids to, okay, you go, boy, you go water my plants. So he's telling, I also used to affect your studies like this when you were learning your lessons. And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So he's telling that sometimes, when I wanted to go fishing, those were also the occasions when, just for having fun or just for my own personal work, I used to give an off to the entire class. So that is what he's trying to say. So Hamel over here is giving different reasons. He's telling that your loss of studies, Franz, or for the matter of fact, for all the students of your class, are not just attributed to you. Your parents are also to blame, and myself, I am also to blame. Students, I think it's already been an hour, right? So I would rather want to stop this lecture over here, It's a long chapter and few more slides are left, approximately 30 to 40 minutes. So I'll continue the chapter in the next video, right? So I hope you enjoyed it. And see, my basic purpose is that you students, you have lots of other subjects to focus on. Some of you must be commerce students, some of you must be medical, non-medical students. Especially for medical, non-medical students, they hardly have any time to give to English, right? And sitting and reading the book, they would never possibly have the time for that except for the final exams when they are approaching. So you just take these lectures like a simple video, just watch them whenever you have free time. One video in a couple of days would be enough. It is sufficient. Everything will be covered through these videos. Even for the commerce students, if you don't want to go read the entire text, this is NCERT text completely explained to you in a simplified language, right? So you just, open the video maybe on your television or on your iPad, laptops, mobiles, whatever means you find comfortable. I will also be making a video on the important questions. So this chapter will have two more videos coming up. One would be there where I'll be finishing the chapter. I think it will be a 30 to 40 minutes video, but because I feel most of the chapter we have already done. And another, I'll make a short and simple video on the important questions that can be asked from this chapter, right? I hope you enjoyed learning with me. I really enjoyed teaching you. Thank you so much. Bye bye.